and move forward and share my screen. One other thing that I like to ask is if for whatever reason during the duration of this webinar, you're not able to hear me, or maybe you're not able to see my screen, which you should be able to see now, please just drop that comment into the chat box because I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. You can also drop your questions and comments into the chat box as well if you don't feel comfortable coming off mute in the middle of the webinar. So a couple of options there. The goal for today's presentation is to, provide you all with some content that's actually helpful in terms of getting started with Priority Matrix. So your feedback is very much welcome. Okay, so for today's topic, we are going to be looking at how to build a strong line of communication with your manager. So it's always a kind of an interesting dynamic when we look at priority matrix being used with management and with the teammates. And when I say interesting, I definitely only mean that in a positive light. And it's such a ongoing conversation, which is how can we effectively communicate with our management and with our teammates without having to email or, have so many meetings. And the goal is to have kind of a two-way street of communication for constant progress updates and, constant chatter amongst each other to make sure that your priorities are aligned. But how do we achieve that, again, without emailing and without having meetings? I've been lucky enough to be with Affluence for just about 6 years at this point. And during those 6 years, I've done a lot of customer success and a lot of sales, and that's giving me the opportunity to speak to our users firsthand, those who are first seeing Priority Matrix. And I get to hear a lot of their feedback in terms of communication challenges that they're having with their management and throughout the organization before they adopt Priority Matrix. These communication challenges typically look like sending dozens of emails with several of them going unseen, struggling to follow up with conversations through Microsoft Teams, and a lack of visibility and a lack of progress updates. So I know for a lot of us on the webinar today, this definitely can resonate with you because these are not challenges that are just limited to a certain type of role or certain organization. They're definitely felt across, essentially every team that doesn't have a good system in place right now. The priority matrix approach is set up to support streamlined communication into just one central system. On the next slide, I'm going to talk about the Office 365 integrations as well, which is, again, going to kind of help you work through that system they're already using, being the Microsoft Teams platform. We provide a visual approach for progress updates and prioritization. One of our biggest goals with Priority Matrix is to help you keep your priorities aligned across your team, across the department, or across the organization, whoever is using Priority Matrix. Not only do we want to help you keep your priorities aligned, but we want you to be able to understand these priorities at a quick glance without having to ask questions or, dig through some type of list of things you have to get done. With the 4-quadrant approach, you're able to very quickly just visually understand what the priorities look like. Priority Matrix also provides contextual evidence for more effective meetings. So kind of going along with that idea of having an open line of communication between management and the teammates, during these meetings, we want to help you communicate effectively. And by being able to provide a little bit more evidence and details for what you're working on, this communication can really improve and you can get a lot more done in a short period of time. So as I mentioned, Priority Matrix does integrate directly with your Office 365 applications, such as Microsoft Teams, Outlook 365, and SharePoint. Over the last couple of years, I've seen an increasing number of organizations start to use Microsoft Teams. And because of this, we took it upon ourselves here at Affluence to make sure that Priority Matrix has an incredibly strong integration with the Teams platform. So for those of you who have adopted Teams primarily, you're able to continue working in there. but you can, kind of elevate your prioritization and communication with your team. So what are we going to be looking at in the live priority matrix demo, which will be coming up just following the screen? I'm going to teach you how you can have a powerful communicative relationship between a manager and teammates. Again, it's always an interesting topic because, there's such a fine line between sharing progress and being in touch constantly or feeling like it's kind of overbearing, spending too much time in your emails and sharing progress updates. Priority Matrix is definitely able to help you find that balance. I'm going to show you how you can use Priority Matrix with Microsoft Teams specifically in a couple different places for central communication. And we're also going to look at how you can effectively share and receive status updates in a couple different views throughout Priority Matrix. So with all that being said, I wanted to remind you all that your questions are definitely welcome. While we kind of transition screens here and I pull up my actual Priority Matrix application, it would be a great time to ask any questions that you might have. Okay, perfect. So what are we looking at here on my screen? For those of you who are just seeing Priority Matrix now for the very first time, I'm going to give you just kind of a quick demo so you can understand kind of the lay of the land. So during the duration of this webinar, it's not terribly confusing as to kind of what I'm talking about here. So right now on my screen, what we're looking at, this is my Priority Matrix application integrated directly into Microsoft Teams. So you'll see on the left-hand side that I've got Priority Matrix installed and I have it pinned open, which I definitely suggest all of you do. This is going to allow Priority Matrix to stay open really no matter where you're working within your Microsoft Teams platform. For those of you who do like to follow along during this presentation, I always like to point out that I have the My Projects tab selected, and then I clicked on the 4 quadrants, and this kind of opens up that central place where you're going to be able to create projects, which will then be shared with your teammates and your management. So these projects are there to kind of create a folder or a bucket, if you will, to say, hey, here's all the priorities that fit under this topic that we are working on as a team. So from that management perspective, they know where to go to see those specific status updates for those priorities in that project. So a couple things I always like to point out. Let's say you have a team of 30 people using Priority Matrix with you. When you go ahead and create a new project, so let's say you're an individual contributor that's creating a project that maybe you only need to share with your management and the whole group of Priority Matrix users don't need to see that project, that's no problem because that's actually how Priority Matrix is set up, which is there to provide you that privacy. So you only have to share a project with those people that you want to share it with and whenever you're ready. It's not automatically going to be shared with anybody. So when we go in here and I go ahead and I open up a project, this is now going to be that central space that I've been kind of referring to where you're going to be able to collaborate with your teammates. So now we're kind of getting down into the nitty gritty, which is how do we have that effective communication on those different levels between teammates and a management position, or maybe it's several managers or several different levels of management. So a couple things I want to specify here. When I create a project and I share it with my teammates like I've done, I've added project members, which you can see on the right-hand side. At this point, everybody in this project is able to see these priorities. If I go in here and I add a new action item, we'll just say new invoice is in progress for company X, and then we'll just say this is going to be due in 4 hours. Just kind of a miscellaneous example here. But again, these 2 other people that I've shared this project with are now, in fact, able to see this priority that I've added. The question now becomes for management and for users in Priority Matrix is, does my manager need to see notifications for the specific priority that I just added? Or is it enough for them just to be able to go into the project and click on it and see these updates when they want to? If the answer is yes, and you're thinking, I'm a manager and I want to see these progress updates in real time as they're updated on this item, all that person would have to do is simply add the manager as a follower to the item. So again, what we're doing is we're saying, okay, now when I go in and I update the progress, or maybe I share an update and say email was sent to, person Y at 8 a.m. this morning. Whatever type of status update the user is sharing at this point, all of these people added as followers are getting these direct notifications. So it's kind of an interesting thing to keep in mind, which is that you're definitely able to give your management visibility into this entire project without bombarding them with notifications, because you can pick and choose on an item level what type of updates you want them to see within this project. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. That's a really big question that we typically get, which is what's the difference between just sharing a project and actually wanting my manager to receive these notifications? So now what we've done by using the priority matrix project and action items to share status updates is we've eliminated the need to email, hopefully eliminated the need to schedule meetings to see these progress updates. And we're able to do this all in one central space. So anybody involved in this project will be able to see these priorities and status updates on the fly. All right, so kind of moving on here, again, circling back to kind of the main project view to retouch on this concept, which is you can share projects with your managers, and then you can decide on an item level which priorities you want them to get notifications for. So in terms of sharing notifications and again, kind of keeping that two-way street of communication open, from that management perspective, when you're ready to see status updates in live time with these alerts coming up, you're going to cruise to the alert section, which is where you're going to see deadlines that occur and new comments from your teammates on those items that they've added you as followers for. Anything that your team is trying to share with you in terms of notifications is going to come right into the alert section. I also want you all to understand that you can click on an item for more context to bring it up on the right-hand side. And you can also clear notifications when you need to. Another really powerful view that I always like to point out for managers and teammates using Priority Matrix is our agenda view. So what happens in the agenda is the system automatically looks across all of the projects that you have, and it says, okay, Erica, here's every priority that you own that has a due date for today. So from the teammate perspective or, individual contributor, if you will, if your manager has created priorities and assigned them to you across several different projects, this agenda view is going to be your go-to space to make sure that you're not overlooking any of those priorities across all those different projects. Now, shifting gears, if I go to items I follow, remember this would be that use case of a teammate creating priorities, adding the manager as a follower, and now from that management role, we can go to this agenda view and see all of the people that we oversee, all the priorities that they've invited us to follow based off of the deadlines that we have, so that manager can make sure that they're on top of all those status updates and see kind of this condensed view of what their teammates would deem as the highest priorities based off of the deadlines for every single day for the next 7 days. So this is a really powerful view, and in fact, it's pretty unique to Priority Matrix because without this centralized view, I find managers struggling to go through all their emails, maybe being in back-to-back meetings to touch base with all of their teammates. But with this condensed agenda view, it's pretty much unlimited visibility. You can communicate back and forth if you have questions. So maybe I say, can you Can you follow up sooner than this afternoon? I can send that comment. And again, now we're able to communicate, share progress updates without having to email or sit through meetings. One more view, which I would like to show you all, which is the one-on-one. In terms of immediate visibility and effective communication, this one-on-one view is probably going to be your go-to, especially if you're a manager and you do oversee a group of people. And I definitely understand that managers typically have, weekly or maybe bi-weekly touch base meetings with their teammates. And those meetings are probably not going to go away. You're going to have them from time to time, but you might as well have an effective meeting and keep it as short as possible when those meetings do have to be scheduled. So, with the one-on-one view, what happens is you can choose the person who you're hopping in this meeting with, and the system looks across all of your shared projects. And what it does is it says, okay, Erica, here's all of your shared priorities between yourself and this one person. So, again, this would be the idea of a manager creating a task and delegating it to one of their teammates, or a teammate creating a task and adding the manager as a follower or delegating it to them to really grab their attention. So, it's really any priority that's relevant between a manager and this other person. And with all of that being said, you can even create a shared task. So we'll just say new shared task due in 6 hours. It's automatically shared. You can prioritize it into the correct project, into the correct quadrant. And when we go ahead and hit add, we're going to see that this is now added to our shared priority list. So what's really special about this now is when we're ready to provide a status update or circle back and see where we are at with this task, very easy to find. Notifications are being sent for these progress updates, and nothing is slipping through the cracks. Again, without a manager having to pester or ask for status updates, there's that two-way street of communication immediately available now through this task. One more best practice that I always like to share with people is the concept of actually being able to prioritize a chat through Microsoft Teams. And the reason I bring this up is simply because of a common piece of feedback that I've been getting over the past several years, which is the idea of a teammate and a manager using a Microsoft Teams chat to communicate, but the struggle of these comments being kind of lost in space and having a tough time sharing progress updates once this comment is kind of out of view. So now what you're able to do is you can actually grab a comment and you can prioritize it directly into your priority matrix. So this would allow you to feel confident still using the Microsoft Teams chatting platform to communicate when needed. But when something sparks your interest and pops up and you think, hey, this is really important, we need to keep track of it, and I need to share status updates on this, grab that comment, put it into the correct project, throw a deadline on there so you don't forget about it. And now you can rest assured that, again, Priority Matrix will be providing that central space for communication and status updates on everything. Chats, emails that you prioritize, anything that you need to share updates on with your manager, you can do it now directly through Priority Matrix. If you're interested in learning more about kind of the advanced functionalities, a basic introduction, or the best practices of how you can use Priority Matrix through Teams, when I send you that follow-up email, be sure to check out my upcoming webinars. I have one scheduled to touch on all those topics. They're all super helpful and, definitely going to be beneficial if you have the time to sit in on them. Okay, so kind of circling back to my PowerPoint here, some of the key takeaways. Communication in one place makes a huge difference. When a manager is able to see progress updates from everybody on their team across all the different projects they're working on, it takes the stress out of having to go to your email or schedule another meeting. You have that in just one place. You're going to have stronger communication, and that's the difference between hitting and missing deadlines. When you're able to make sure that nothing is slipping through the cracks and everything is on par with the due date, again, by seeing this all in one place, you're going to be able to make sure you're not missing any deadlines. Priority Matrix does all of this and so much more. And so I would definitely encourage all of you who are interested in learning more about this system to check out my upcoming webinars. And even if you're not able to attend them, just register for it. And after the webinar ends, similar to what I'm going to do today, I'll send you that follow-up email with the recorded session to watch at your convenience. At this time, I would love to kind of open this up again to any questions that you might have. You're welcome to either, again, take yourself off mute and you can actually ask those questions, or you can drop those comments into the chat box and I can read them out loud and answer them for you.
Hi, yeah, just one question from a manager standpoint, have you received what type of feedback have you received from managers who use this and have used it for some time? Has it improved their visibility and the ability for them to manage across their teams?
Yeah, Katrina, that's a really good question. And we constantly receive incredibly positive feedback from our managers and teams that are using Priority Matrix, especially in terms of the one-on-one view. It's actually really amazing to see how this supports managers because a common piece of feedback that I was always receiving was I'm having these ongoing meetings with my teammates, and they take a long time, and we're constantly going to our emails to try and find our previous communication, constantly digging through channels and chats to figure out what we even need to be talking about on these meetings. And the one-on-one view pretty much diminishes the need to manually prepare for these meetings. Again, because it shows you all of your shared priorities that have hopefully been, tracked in Priority Matrix over the past several weeks. And then another really important aspect of this is, which I kind of touched on, is the idea of being able to prioritize a task during these meetings. And so, again, a really common struggle that I heard was, after these meetings, my teammates still don't really know what they need to be working on. And then we have to have a conversation or another meeting to refresh on that. But when you can create these shared tasks during the meeting, everybody's on track, everybody knows what they need to work on right after the meeting ends. So that would be, kind of the two most common pieces of feedback that I'm getting. And then also, it's kind of an interesting aspect, which is if you think of kind of a middle management role using Priority Matrix, those people have a lot on their plate. They have to manage their teammates, and then likely they also have to provide status updates to their direct reports. But a lot of the times when we can get kind of 3 or 4 levels of users in Priority Matrix, maybe from the director level to middle management, all the way to the individual contributors, there's so much visibility that, hopefully everybody's kind of on the same page at the same time with all the priorities aligned no matter what. So hopefully that kind of answers your question and provides a little bit more insight. And
Yep, thank you.
actually, that is a really good question, and I wanted to share one thing with you all, which is, of course, hearing testimonials and use cases from people in similar roles to yourself is really one of the most beneficial ways to get started using a tool. And because of that, we started hosting what we're calling a Ask Me Anything fireside chat. And it's basically just an hour-long discussion, if you will, with myself. Oftentimes, our CTO joins, and we encourage Priority Matrix users just to join the conversation, share their use cases, ask questions, and kind of connect with other Priority Matrix users in similar roles. And for questions like that, which is, hey, how do other managers use this? What is your feedback? It really provides that space just to kind of have that open conversation in the Priority Matrix community. So the next time we're hosting that is let me pull up my calendar. I think it's April 8th. Yeah, so it's going to be Friday, April 8th at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And we've been actually having a really good turnout. So if you can, I would say, join that, and it should be pretty interesting for all of us. All right, well, if that kind of wraps it up for questions, we can start to close out of the webinar today. I'm going to stop the recording. But like I said, I'm going